Discover the surprising truth. How marrying a farmer led to an amazing transformation in wealth. Sarah sat in her cramped university office, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. The walls, plastered with degrees and awards, felt suffocating rather than validating. She was blessed with talent, yet the dream she chased sounded more like a gilded cage than a career. The corporate offer loomed like a dark cloud, its promise of status and recognition snatching at her spirit. Climb the ranks, her family urged, eyes shining with their expectations. Each mention twisted in her gut, amplifying the internal battle occurring within her. Did she really want to abandon her purpose, her thirst for justice intertwined with academia? Her phone buzzed with a message from Mark, her lawyer boyfriend. Have you thought about the job? It's a prestigious opportunity. His support felt conditional, as if passion and truth were secondary to climbing the social ladder. Taking a deep breath, Sarah made a decision. She would escape to her grandparents' farm, a place where childhood laughter rested alongside forgotten values. The thought felt mundane. Endless sunflower fields and night skies void of the vibrant city lights seemed agonizingly dull. Yet, as she drove away from Chicago, she felt an unexpected relief wash over her. Maybe there she could wrestle with her doubts, far from the suffocating ambition surrounding her. The farm greeted her with the hum of cicadas and the embrace of warm, earthy smells. But it was David, the kind-hearted farmer next door, who shifted something deep within her. He welcomed her with smiles that didn't demand anything, his hands calloused yet gentle. Conversation flowed between them under the expanse of shimmering stars, and she was captivated. David spoke of sustainable farming and community values, igniting a spark in her that made her question everything. This rugged man with dirt under his nails seemed to possess a wisdom that her academic accolades couldn't touch. But as the days passed, the shadows of self-doubt crept back. What about her career? Her ambitions? The accolades awaited her in Chicago, tantalizingly close but feeling more burdensome than ever. Would she turn her back on a life she had fought for, in pursuit of a man who seemed so far removed from her world? Her fears twisted around her, leaving her breathless. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then came the revelation that shattered her fragile peace. David confided his struggle, the looming threat of losing the farm due to ruthless zoning laws designed to benefit corporate giants. Her heart raced in response, an almost painful tug at her conscience. How could she reconcile this with her ambitions? She felt torn, the pull between her dreams and the generosity of David's quiet revolution filling her with tumult. The anxiety wrapped itself around her like a vice. Should she abandon her goals, or risk everything to support a cause that resonated deeply with her values? The pressure weighed heavily upon her. The clock ticked. What if she missed her chance? As the specter of uncertainty loomed larger, Sarah found herself questioning not only her commitment to David, but the very essence of who she was. The stakes climbed sharply within her soul, demanding an answer she wasn't prepared to face. The moment pulsed with unresolved tension, leaving a visceral ache deeper than any academic pursuit. There they stood at the crossroads of their lives, hope and despair colliding, leaving Sarah on the precipice. What would she choose? The familiar allure of accolades or the unknown journey of genuine connection and purpose? Her heart felt the weight of every decision as it threatened to shatter her carefully crafted world. Standing at the edge of the farm, Sarah felt the breeze twirling through the trees, yet it did little to erase the storm brewing inside her. It was as if nature itself was mocking her indecision. Each gust carried with it reminders of the choices looming over her like the gathering clouds on the horizon. As she turned her back to the fields and faced David, she felt a tremor in her resolve. The farmer stood there strong and grounded, but beneath that strength lay vulnerability, a shared fear of losing something precious. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice threading through the chaos of her thoughts. "You don't have to decide everything right now." He took a step toward her, the dirt beneath his feet a testament to his connection with the land. "I'm scared too. But it's important to think about what we truly want. His words reverberated in her mind like an echo in a cavern, challenging her to confront not only her feelings for him, but the very foundation of her professional aspirations. For years, she had chased a vision constructed from societal expectations, often represented by her academic accolades. But David's presence highlighted a different path, one filled with authenticity and sincerity that invigorated her in a way her accomplishments never had. What mattered more, the pursuit of recognition within the confines of a stuffy office or the fight for something she believed in, even if it meant risking the future she had always envisioned? The question pulsated through her veins, each a rhythm reminding her of a choice she'd yet to confront. That night, she sat on the front porch, the stars shimmering above like a celestial audience, demanding her attention. David joined her, cradling 2 mugs of chamomile tea, an offering of comfort amid her confusion. They spoke of the mundane, yet his stories about the farm became more profound than simple conversational fillers. Every anecdote revealed not just his life but a philosophy: herding cows, planting crops, the seasons shaping their lives. He was passionate about nurturing the land, investing in the future rather than merely chasing fleeting rewards. It suddenly dawned on her that this was a turning point. She was learning through David's own struggles, gathering strength not from accolades, but from a deep-rooted connection to purpose and community. But as she sipped her tea, a thought clawed at her. Her educational background and sharp intellect seemed like a powerful tool. Wasn't there a way to merge her passion for justice with the fight against the very system threatening David's livelihood? She envisioned herself leading an initiative that bridged her academic insight with genuine social impact. This wasn't about abandoning her ambitions, but integrating them with a cause she genuinely cared for. Maybe she could leverage her position, become an advocate for sustainable agriculture, and challenge corporate norms from within. "I want to help," she announced slowly, a new determination crystallizing in her voice. "Let us figure this out together. I might know a thing or two about fighting bureaucracy." David's eyes lit up, a flicker of hope igniting in the otherwise cool night. She felt exhilarated, the fear that had forced her into silence melting away. The small acts of defiance fueled her desire to act, pushing her to dig deeper into solutions she hadn't imagined before. She wasn't simply a spectator in this unfolding narrative. She was an active participant, ready to carve her path. Yet, with this newfound clarity came the weight of responsibility. Sure, she could rally resources on behalf of David and the farm, but what implications did this carry? As her mind raced with ideas, another nagging fear surfaced. Could she really balance these two worlds, her past ambitions against a vibrant unknown? As dawn broke over the fields, with light spilling over the horizon like an illuminating promise, Sarah stood at the precipice once more. She had a plan taking shape, an approach rooted in both academia and advocacy, but she sensed the challenges ahead. The path was fraught with uncertainties, and confronting opposition would test her in ways she never anticipated. The moment had arrived for action, yet questions loomed larger than ever. Who would stand against corporate giants by her side? And how far would she go to secure a future not just for herself, but for someone she had come to care about deeply? With commitment coursing through her, Sarah felt ready. There, under the rising sun, she drummed up the resolve to face whatever lay ahead, sensing a tide change swelling on the horizon. But little did she know, the impending confrontation with the corporate powers would challenge her like never before, pulling at her integrity and vision. It was time to confront not only external adversities, but the internal battles brewing within her. The first rays of sunlight cast long shadows across the fields as Sarah paced the porch, her mind racing with potential strategies. The weight of her decision felt heavier than ever. Each step she took was a reflection on the people she would need to sway, the resources she would require, and the allies she had yet to cultivate. In those early moments of the day, she was struck by an urge to blend her analytical mind with David's practical understanding of the farm. This wouldn't just be about drafting proposals or making phone calls to various stakeholders. It was about weaving a vision that would resonate deeply with others. She needed to hone her message, leverage her academic prowess, and convey a story that would move people. But to do this effectively, she had to dig into her own past, not just her education but also her motivations. Where had her passion for justice begun? Just then, a flash of anger ignited within her at the thought of the corporations threatening David's way of life. It fueled her desire to act. This wasn't an abstract issue anymore. It was very personal. As she envisioned the board meetings lined with suit-clad executives, she understood. She needed to meet them on their turf. Her stature in the academic community could serve as a platform, but she needed David's stories to ground her arguments in reality. Determined, she turned back toward the farm. "David," she called, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. As he approached, she was struck by the contrast between their worlds. He thrived in the soil while she lived through words and theories. Yet, that contrasting dynamic felt crucial. He understood the land and she understood the law. "I have an idea." Sarah's pulse quickened with each word. She detailed a plan that formed in her mind, one where they would gather first-hand accounts from him and his fellow farmers. With tangible evidence of the challenges they faced, they could create not just an advocacy campaign but a compelling narrative that showcased the human side of agricultural struggles. David listened intently, nodding slowly as her enthusiasm washed over him. "We need to position this as a survival story," she continued, her thoughts gaining momentum. "We have to show how these corporations are not just jeopardizing profits, they're jeopardizing lives." Still, doubts crept in like unwanted fog. What if the narrative was twisted? What if their hardships were overshadowed by the might of financial powerhouses? Could she truly succeed in this endeavor? "What's stopping us?" Sarah interrupted her thoughts, shaking her head as if to clear it. "We can work together. You'll be the voice and I'll be the structure. We can host a series of discussions, bring together those who share our vision, those who have been impacted." "I don't know, Sarah. It sounds ambitious, maybe too ambitious." David's brow furrowed slightly as he turned the idea over in his mind. Humility characterized his perspective, a stark contrast to her burgeoning assertiveness. "Ambitious is what we need, David. If we don't talk about it, no one else will." Determination radiated from her. It was a strange sensation for Sarah, feeling both exhilarated and terrified by the possibility of failing. She was breaking away from the safety of analysis into the unpredictable world of action. As they worked through the details of her plan, brainstorming possible venues and formats, Sarah felt a newfound connection to her identity. This was her moment of clarity. Activism had rarely been part of her personal narrative, and yet here she was, finding herself in the crossroads of two identities, intellectual and activist. Despite the excitement, a lingering disquiet followed her. Was she truly equipped for this journey? What if her academic world undermined the relatable story David wanted to present? The shadows of self-doubt returned, gnawing at her confidence like a persistent itch. The morning sun climbed higher, and with it came clarity. She was ready to face these challenges. Yet the two worlds loomed large in her heart, a push and pull between her past and the unknown future ahead. As the day unfolded, Sarah began reaching out to her contacts, drafting emails and outlining proposals, her hands trembling with both fear of the unknown and excitement for what lay ahead. Yet, looming in the distance, the corporate giants were unaware of her nascent movement. Each decision she made would draw her deeper into a conflict that threatened everything she held dear. As the day descended into evening, and the sky glowed a warm orange, a text from an unexpected number broke through her concentration. It was a former colleague offering a chance to meet about a project she never imagined she'd be tackling. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steeled herself. This was no longer just about David or the farm. It was about an entire community whose well-being depended on her choices. The time had come to face both opportunity and opposition, but in what direction would that lead her? She could feel the winds of change gathering once more, hinting at the battles yet to unfold. With the morning sun climbing steadily higher in the sky, Sarah found herself seated at her dining room table. A scatter of papers spread before her. The text from her former colleague had ignited a spark of curiosity in her mind, yet the unfamiliarity of the task ahead made her pulse race. The meeting was scheduled for later that week, but procrastination was not an option. She needed to prepare. Her plan with David had ignited a sense of purpose, but now she had to juggle dual responsibilities, crafting a campaign and fully embracing the meeting's possibilities. The prospect of collaborating with old contacts both thrilled and terrified her. She had always been a researcher, a thinker, but now she was thrust into a new role: innovator, strategist, and advocate. Fingers flying over the keyboard, she drafted a proposal summarizing her new vision for sustainable farming practices, infused with the authentic voices of those directly affected. The thought of making a real difference fueled her words, and she suddenly realized how much her professional trajectory had shifted. She was no longer solely a student of policy, she was becoming an agent of change. Yet, with each keystroke came a wave of self-doubt. What qualifications did she really have to confront entrenched corporate interests? She saw them as titans, their influence reaching far beyond her small town. As images of cold conference rooms filled with wary executives floated through her mind, the fear of being unprepared stung sharply. Deciding she needed to bolster her confidence, she picked up the phone and dialed David's number. "Hey David, can we meet later today?" she asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety twisting in her stomach. Their discussion had solidified so many ideas, but this time, she needed his perspective on framing their message for broader audiences. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, his tone easy, as if anticipating her call. "I think we need to talk strategy, especially with this opportunity coming up. I want to ensure we're presenting ourselves strongly," she replied, relief flooding her as he agreed without hesitation. Through the rest of the day, Sarah oscillated between excitement about this newfound direction and trepidation about what it all meant. Each piece of research she uncovered painted a clearer picture of both the struggle farmers faced and the powerful forces pressing down on them. It was becoming evident that they were not just fighting for sustenance but challenging an entire ideology entrenched in greed. That evening, after a rigorous day of preparations, she met with David at a local cafe, the buzz of conversation around them a stark contrast to the solemn topics they tackled. They settled into a booth, and David launched into sharing his stories again, anecdotes filled with emotion and grit that tugged at her heart. The frustration he expressed and the pain behind his words were palpable, a reminder of the seriousness of their mission. "What if we could get footage of you in your element?" Sarah suggested, her mind racing. "People need to see the day-to-day reality, the hard work, the setbacks, and the victories. It can be raw but impactful." David scratched his chin thoughtfully. "That could resonate, but showing that will require trust. The other farmers, they'll have to be on board." "Leave that to me," Sarah replied, determination hardening her voice. "I can talk to them, share our goals. It's time we give their stories a platform. They're not just statistics. They're the backbone of this community." But as the conversation deepened, Sarah sensed an unease in David. What if it all backfires? What if we expose ourselves to something worse? He mused, fear creeping into his expression. "Then we take it one step at a time. We control our narrative, David. That's what matters," she reassured him, trying to inject the confidence she was still cultivating within herself. Later that night, Sarah lay awake, the weight of responsibility hanging over her. She had ventured so far from academia into the visceral reality of activism, and she was conscious that the stakes were incredibly high. Something had shifted within her. She was stepping into a new realm of engagement that demanded both courage and meticulous planning. As dawn broke over the horizon, her phone buzzed again, pulling her from a restless sleep. It was a notification from the meeting reminder, but the message burned into her mind made her sit up. Corporate panel discussion on future agriculture needs. Her heart raced with excitement and dread. The time had come to confront the very organization she was fighting against. What could she possibly say to sway powerful figures in suits, far removed from the lives of everyday farmers? The moment of truth was approaching, and with it uncertainty loomed large. Sarah felt the weight settling on her shoulders, shadows of doubt on one side and a flicker of boldness igniting on the other. Would she rise to the occasion or falter? With this internal conflict raging, she clenched her fists. The answer lay just beyond the horizon, and she had to be ready to meet it head-on. The morning sun cast a warm glow across her scattered papers, highlighting the stark contrast between her tentative notes and the bold ambitions swelling in her heart. As Sarah sipped her coffee, she stared at the proposal she had been drafting. The words began to blur, not from exhaustion but from the rising tide of anxiety. The need for a compelling narrative gnawed at her, but it was the prospect of addressing a corporate panel that sent her mind into chaos. With a deep breath, Sarah forced her eyes back to the screen. She began to type again, this time framing her thoughts around her personal connection to rural life and the challenges facing farmers today. It wasn't just about statistics. It was about real stories, emotions, and the profound implications for future generations. Each keystroke felt like a step toward reclaiming her voice in the conversation. But she wrestled with doubt. What did she know about negotiating with powerful stakeholders? Was she even capable of making them listen? She ushered these thoughts away. Doubt was an unwelcome guest at her table, and today, there wouldn't be room for its insidious negativity. Sarah made a resolute decision. She would confront her fears head-on. The hours ticked by, and after several iterations, her proposal finally took a solid shape. In it, she outlined not only the challenges but also compelling solutions that leveraged innovative technology and community-led initiatives. The realization that she was drawing from both passion and knowledge empowered her, creating an exhilarating momentum as midday approached. Sarah realized she needed to connect with her allies. She dialed David's number, a surge of purpose guiding her. "I think we should gather the farmers, hold a meeting before the big day," she proposed. "I want them to share their stories with me, their experiences, if we are to present a united front." "Great idea," David replied, enthusiasm warming his voice. "We need their authenticity. If they see that we stand with them, that might just give us the trust we need." Momentum built within her as they quickly structured the logistics. She felt a renewed energy course through her veins. The hesitations that had previously anchored her were slowly lifting. In the days that followed, she reached out to the farmers, inviting them to a town hall to share their narratives. The session turned out to be a profound experience, one that filled the room with raw honesty. It was here, amid the conversations colored by passion, stress, and hope, that Sarah found herself learning as much as she was sharing. The farmers spoke of their struggles not just with crops but with the systems designed to support them, systems that too often failed to deliver. After the meeting, Sarah reflected on the stark contrast between her initial academic approach to these issues and the deeply personal insights she had just gained. Each story was a thread in a tapestry of resilience, and they had given her a clearer vision for the corporate panel presentation. She had transformed from an isolated researcher into an integral part of something much larger than herself. Buoyed by this sense of purpose, she returned home to revise her proposal once more. The farmers' voices were now woven into every point she made. The fear that once gripped her was slowly replaced by the weight of responsibility. She was no longer just presenting data, she was now a conduit for their cries for change, their hopes for a better future. As the presentation day drew nearer, Sarah prepared both mentally and strategically. She rehearsed her delivery, ensuring her tone conveyed the urgency and significance of their stories. Each practice speech transformed her anxiety into determination, making it clear that she wouldn't just be walking into the meeting as a faceless participant but as their advocate. However, as she finalized her slides one night, a chilling thought crept into her mind. What if the panel dismissed their concerns as mere anecdotes? Would her efforts be for naught? She sat back, visualizing the boardroom filled with stoic figures in tailored suits, skepticism etched across their faces. The weight of this apprehension felt almost unbearable, but the glimmer of resolve sparked once more. She needed to remind herself, this wasn't simply about her. It was about the lives that hung in the balance, driven by an urgency that could no longer be ignored. Inspiring herself with that realization, Sarah crafted a closing argument that echoed the voices of the farmers they represented. As she finally exhaled the tension built over the last weeks, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, determined, resolved. She wasn't simply preparing to face the corporate giants. She was ready to challenge them. And as she closed her laptop, the thought hit her forcefully. The time for change had arrived, and she would be at the forefront, spearheading the fight. Yet, a dark undercurrent of worry still lurked in her mind. What if her biggest fear materialized? What if they didn't just reject her ideas but retaliated against her and the farmers she represented? She could feel the precinct of risk pushing against her, the stakes climbing higher. The moment of confrontation loomed within her view, and the duality of trepidation and anticipation formed a tempest inside. She tightened her jaw, steeling herself for the battle ahead. Would she ultimately find the courage to stand firm against the tide? As uncertainty flickered in her gut, she whispered to herself, I can do this. Her heart raced, suspense mounting as she prepared for the confrontation that awaited. Whatever the outcome, the fight for those stories was only just beginning. The night before the presentation, Sarah lay wide awake, replaying every detail in her mind. The fear of the unknown mixed with an unsettling anticipation. She could see the stark contrast of the boardroom, its polished surfaces reflecting a world she felt increasingly alienated from. Yet she was determined to bridge that divide. Each flicker of doubt that invaded her thoughts was quickly met with an equally stubborn reaffirmation of her purpose. She thought about the farmers who had shared their stories with her, their struggles, their persistence, their courage. It was their resolve that galvanized her, igniting a fierce dedication to advocate on their behalf. Resolving to channel that energy, she closed her eyes and envisioned the delivery. Each farmer's face looking back at her, urging her forward. They were counting on her. Morning came with the sharp chime of her alarm, and she rose, forcing her limbs to cooperate as she donned her carefully chosen outfit, a smart blazer and an understated blouse, and armor of sorts for the confrontation ahead. As she drove to the venue, the landscape unfurling outside her window felt like a blurred echo of the very lives she sought to represent. The hotel stood tall against the dawn, its grandeur almost intimidating. She parked, looking around at the entrance bustling with professionals, their laughter and chatter contrasting sharply with the weight she carried in her heart. Clutching her proposal tightly, she navigated through the lobby. Her thoughts were a jumble. How to introduce herself, how to establish credibility without overwhelming. The stakes felt monumental. Inside the boardroom, she was greeted by the panel, 5 individuals who appeared to command the authority and resources that could either advance or demolish the solutions she had painstakingly pieced together. Their expressions revealed nothing, but that only added to the tension rising within her. Taking her seat, Sarah scanned the room, noting the polished laptops and sleek pads, the tools of negotiation and influence. As she flipped through her prepared slides, a realization struck her: these were more than just words on a page. They were woven with the hopes and dreams of the farmers. They were living, breathing entities that needed her voice. The presentation began, and as she introduced herself, the tremor in her voice betrayed the enormity of the moment. But with each statistic she shared, each heartfelt story from the farmers echoing in her mind, she felt a shift. The initial apprehension transformed into a steady resolve. Today, she began, it's not merely about costs or returns, it's about livelihoods, legacy. These are our farmers, our neighbors, they are the backbone of our community. Their stories matter. She could see interest flicker in some of their eyes, a glimmer of recognition that possibly hinted at the capacity for empathy. But suddenly, a voice interrupted her train of thought. A stern-looking board member leaned forward, skepticism etched in his features. Are we supposed to believe that anecdotes concern us? We operate on data, not stories, he challenged, his voice dripping with doubt. Something deep within her stirred. Her heart raced, each beat louder in her ears, and she felt the weight of a collective apprehension rise. Yet, in that stark moment of confrontation, Sarah chose clarity over fear. Anecdotes are the very foundation of our understanding. These are not just words. They are the truth behind the numbers. The impact of policy does not live in spreadsheets, it breathes in the lives of these families. She could feel her passion swelling with every word, the realization that her voice could serve as the beacon they desperately needed. As the panel members exchanged glances, a ripple of doubt crossed their previously stoic faces. It was a moment of revelation for her. She was not simply presenting, she was advocating. With every challenge that arose, she would not back down. Yet, as the confrontation deepened, another question began to shadow her thoughts. Would her passion be enough to dissolve their skepticism? Would she be able to turn their hardened resistance into an open debate? As her voice rang in the tension-filled room, she realized she had to brace for their responses. There was still so much at stake: lives, futures, her own belief in success. The final moments of her presentation brimmed with urgency, laying bare what was at stake. Yet, the space around her began to feel constricted, anxiety curling around her throat. All she could do was hold on to the belief that her passion could break through the barriers of indifference, but the true revelation awaited her as the questioning ensued. What challenges would emerge from those who wielded unyielding power? The tension lingered, and she prepared herself for the hardest conversation she had yet to face. The questioning began immediately, a barrage of pointed inquiries deflecting the earlier momentum Sarah had so painstakingly built. Each board member took their turn, their skepticism echoing loudly in the air. Her composure wavered with every challenge thrown at her, the intensity of the moment pressing firmly against her resolve. Your statistics are outdated. How can we trust a proposal grounded in old data? Asked a woman with sharp features who appeared to scrutinize every word. The tension in Sarah's stomach tightened. She had anticipated this. The farmers have been facing continuous changes in climate patterns that aren't always part of annual reports, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. What matters here is the lived experience, which is often invisible in numbers. There was a flicker of interest from a younger panelist, but it was quickly overshadowed by the senior members. Experience, yes, but how do you account for the risk? The skeptical board member pressed, his eyes narrowing. Risk is an important factor in our decisions. Stories 1T mitigate losses. Every clenching thought threatened to drown her confidence, yet Sarah stood rooted to her cause. Risk is inherent in every venture. But if those risks stem from ignoring the realities of people's lives, then we're envisioning solutions that 1T hold in the long run. It's about empathy turning risk into opportunity through understanding. The boardroom fell momentarily silent. Uncertainty lingered in the air, and she felt the weight of eyes shifting, measuring. For a split second, she could sense her presence filling the space, her voice fighting to echo the realities of those who depended on these decisions. But then, one of the panel members leaned back in his chair, arms crossed skeptically. You speak passionately, yet passion doesn't translate to successful implementation. What's your plan to bring this to fruition? The question hung heavy, a spotlight on her ability to deliver not just on her promise but on their expectations. Sarah felt a stirring inside her. It was now or never. Summoning her energy, she began to detail how their proposal could leverage community resources, focusing on sustainable practices and educational workshops for the farmers. The minute descriptions flowed into a vision of collaboration. She described how implementing feedback loops could create a dynamic platform for farmers to voice concerns, adapting solutions as needed. Her eyes sparkled as she talked about innovative methods drawn from local successes. The energy in the room shifted, a subtle swell of intrigue beginning to emanate as she connected problems with tangible solutions. However, there lingered a sense that she needed to pierce beyond her proposals. An internal voice persisted. What hidden strength could you reveal to them? Something beyond mere facts? Closing her eyes for a brief moment, she remembered her first encounters with the farmers, their unyielding grit in the face of adversity. It became clear that this meeting wasn't just about them. It was about her own transformation, challenging the boundaries she had once placed around her personal interactions. Let us not forget, she continued, that when we invest in people, we unleash potential, resilience, even creativity. We're all here because we want solutions, but the best solutions come from those who live in the reality every day. It's time to pivot how we approach these numbers. Suddenly, she felt a surge of confidence. She was no longer just an advocate. She was a partner in the journey. Each statement felt like slicing through the skepticism, leading it toward a hopeful direction. But then the board member shifted in his seat, a smirk playing on his lips. So you believe you can turn anecdotal evidence into a binding contract? Sounds ambitious. Her heart sank briefly. Was this a curveball meant to uproot her newfound confidence? Yet she sensed a challenge beneath the mockery, a tipping point where she could define her path. Ambition is necessary. It's ambition that pushes boundaries, she replied, standing firm. If we're going to enact lasting change, even ambition has to be on the table. As tension thickened once again, Sarah realized how deeply personal this engagement had become. Suddenly, it was no longer just about the farmers or their struggles. It was about her own fight against doubt, her own expansion of self. Her voice rang clear as she concluded. Let us not shy away from ambitious solutions. We owe it to our future. But as the eyes of the panel lingered on her, a flicker of doubt crept back in. Would they see the truth in her argument? Would they recognize her passion as a stepping stone? Or would they discard it as just another fleeting moment of emotional rhetoric? The room was alive with questions that remained unspoken, and she could feel the ground beneath her shifting yet again. As she waited, heart racing with hope and lingering fear, she knew that what came next could reshape her trajectory both for the farmers and for herself. The questions were not done yet. Other challengers were lurking just beyond this threshold. What if this moment didn't just test her resolve, but transformed her understanding of her own identity? Before she could process the weight of the moment, another board member, a stout man with a thick beard, leaned forward, his expression hardened. Let us assume for a second that we accept your premise. that empathy can translate to actionable solutions. What timelines are we talking about? You mentioned feedback loops. How do you plan to execute those while ensuring that we are not wasting precious time and resources? A spike of anxiety shot through her, threatening to unravel the threads of assurance she had begun weaving. This was not merely a test of her proposal. It felt like a personal interrogation. We need agile frameworks, she responded, forcing steadiness into her tone. My suggestion is to start with pilot programs that harness small communities. These would not only showcase real-time adjustments but also build trust. She could visualize the narrative unfolding: the farmers gathering, sharing experiences, and refining their needs. But she struggled to translate that mental imagery into concrete plans acceptable to the board. Pilot programs, sure, the younger woman from earlier interjected, curiosity sparking in her voice. But how do you propose to measure success without risking the trust you wish to build? The question resonated differently. A surge of clarity washed over Sarah as she recognized the intricacy of accountability she needed to embrace. By creating metrics that are defined by the farmers themselves, she said, success should reflect their lived experiences rather than our imposed standards. When we set benchmarks collaboratively, it fosters ownership. A flicker of acknowledgement passed through the room, but the senior members had yet to be convinced. Forgive my skepticism, the bearded man continued, but it seems naive to believe that farmers can simply dictate metrics to us. Isn't it our job to lead? Her heart raced as she faced this unraveling of her vision. Compromise tested her confidence, but beneath the panic lay a deep-seated conviction. Leadership, she knew, also meant empowering others. Leadership isn't just about dictating terms. It is shaping an environment where others can thrive. Instead of dismissing farmers' inputs, let us turn it into our strength. The bearded man chuckled softly, but there was more uncertainty in his eyes than mockery this time. His posture shifted as Sarah spoke, suggesting the weight of her words was starting to crack through his facade. The transition was subtle but significant. She could feel it in the way the atmosphere shifted as tension merged with tentative intrigue. Soon, though, another board member rose. An older gentleman with a sharp tie. He had maintained a quiet demeanor until this moment. It's commendable that you're connecting emotionally, but businesses are not charities, Sarah. You must show us how your proposals create profit. Panic clawed at her chest as she grappled with the inquiry. Neither she nor the farmers approached their struggles through profit-driven lenses. They were tackling survival, not balancing sheets. Yet, pressure revealed her adaptability. The realization struck her. The more human-centric the approach, the better her chances to align with their commercial aspirations. What if we show how sustainability leads to long-term gains? She pitched without hesitation. Investing in environmentally sound practices enhances yields and customer loyalty, positioning us as a modern business model, rather than an outdated entity. Sarah watched as contemplation settled on the older man's features. The strategic pivot felt empowering. Her confidence began to swell anew. She was not only defending her positions, she was establishing an evolutionary path for the board. But as she navigated through this labyrinth of perspectives, she sensed there were still shards of skepticism lingering, waiting to dismantle her progress. A deeper fear knotted in her stomach. Did she possess the strength to maintain this fiery resolve? The bearded man interjected again. So what do you want from us, Sarah? Hope? Those words feel ephemeral. Show us the grounding for your ambition. This was a pivotal moment, a bridge where doubt could either drown her aspirations or elevate them. Gathering her intellect, she locked eyes with him, articulating with deliberation, I seek your willingness to embrace the inherent complexities of this journey. The truth is, real transformation doesn't just stem from ambition. It requires courage and a commitment to walk together, however daunting. As silence settled over the room, shadows of doubt mingled with a budding acceptance. Sarah could feel the heat of their attention, the unsteady line of inquiry still unwritten. If fear had driven her into this role, perhaps it was also a transformative force, redefining her purpose in the moment. And yet, just as a moment of fragile understanding began to surface, the woman with sharp features spoke again, cutting through the tension like a knife. But what if you fail, Sarah? What if the farmers let you down? The question echoed ominously, and for the first time that day, anxiety surged through her core. Would they embrace her vision of progress when the realities of her ambitions remained untested? More importantly, could failure become a necessary step on her path towards personal evolution? Sarah paused, taking in the severity of the moment. Her own fears lingered, almost palpable as they danced with their uncertainties. This was only the beginning. The fragile alliance she sought could tip in a heartbeat. Her heart raced anew as she prepared to dig deeper, knowing one truth. Embracing vulnerability could light the way for empowerment, even amid the darkness of doubt. But how would she articulate that vulnerability? How would she transform that uncertainty into strength that could resonate with them and herself? This challenge loomed before her like an uncharted territory, waiting for her next move. The room held its breath, an electric air pulsing with unanswered questions and unresolved tensions. Each gaze was a mirror of her own mounting self-doubt. Could she really navigate this intricate labyrinth of expectations and skepticism? The prospect of failure was a specter in her mind, whispering insidiously, while the vision of success glimmered faintly, just out of reach. She took a calculated step forward, grounding herself in the physical space. Failure is an inevitable part of any transformative endeavor, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the rapid thrum of her heartbeat. But it's how we respond to that failure that will define our path forward. If we relax our expectations, allowing for iteration and grace, we create opportunities for growth. Aren't we, as a board, pushing for innovation? The bearded man blinked, his sharp features softened in reflection. Dimly she sensed she was breaking through layers of skepticism, but for every inch she gained, she felt the looming weight of resistance still pressing down. So you will excuse mistakes? The old gentleman challenged, his brows knitting together suspiciously. Isn't there a risk in that? Every risk carries a potential reward, Sarah countered, subtly shifting the narrative. Look at successful companies that prioritized learning over perfection. They fostered cultures where teams could experiment openly. Their ability to learn from each small failure minimized substantially larger losses later. A ripple of intrigue snaked through the room, yet fear still coiled tightly within her gut. These men and women weren't just assessing her ideas, they were examining her character, her very capability to lead. It was no longer just about the farmers, it was about Sarah's unwavering resolve to stand firm amidst their skepticism. With a deep inhalation, she transitioned into a demonstration of her commitment. Imagine our farmers, she articulated, grounding her thoughts again in the people she aimed to empower. What if helping them with training and sustainable practices could be the stepping stone for them to become not just participants but advocates of our brand? Their stories will affect our narrative. When they thrive, we flourish together. The boardroom hummed, half caught in her vision. But now, that half acknowledgement didn't feel sufficient. What did they require to truly see her perspective? She sensed a window, an opportunity begging for a decisive pivot. However, she continued, brushing her sweaty palms against her slacks. Let us not sugarcoat the risks. I believe in radical transparency, internal and external. Share successes and failures with all stakeholders. Transparency builds trust, and trust garners commitment. This will echo beyond this room. For the first time, doubt shifted from their eyes into contemplation as she laid the groundwork for her vision. But shred by shred, her fear clawed at the edges of her confidence, forming a gnawing question. What if the heart of her plan rested on fragile foundations? As she locked eyes with each member, searching for signs of alignment, Sarah felt a surge of determination mingle with emerging uncertainty. It became imperative to anchor her vision not merely on emotion but on actionable data that aligned with their profit-driven motives. Let us create a framework for quarterly reviews, Sarah proposed briskly, where insights from our partnerships with farmers can be shared alongside performance metrics. We need to anoint our journey with both qualitative and quantitative assessments. Introduce a risk management strategy that pivots with actionable insights. This dual approach will not only keep us accountable, but will reinforce the consortium we aim to build. The silence that followed hung like a taut wire, her words resonating in the confines of the room. There was no turning back now, and she refused to falter. The task had expanded beyond articulating her vision. It required her to weave a story that aligned each stakeholder's goals with compassion. Then, as if summoned by the tension, the bearded man leaned back in. Contemplation. An ambitious scope, he acknowledged, a note of respect lingering in his tone. But can you offer us a tangible plan of action so we can visualize this? A flicker of panic coursed through her. The chorus of ideas felt like a rush of water, and she had to ensure she withdrew succinct action. She needed to channel the chaos into clarity. We can convene dedicated task forces to structure our pilot. Each task force would lead different aspects: sustainability, farmer relations, profitability metrics, and create short-term wins that build confidence among all parties. But as she finished, she realized a key question still hovered in the room like a cloud of uncertainty. The energy shifted, and she intuitively sensed the anticipation of their next inquiry. The older man raised an eyebrow, following through with yet another challenge. And if all this asked of us starts to fail? What then, Sarah? If what you construct collapses before us? The room grew still, shadows stretching out as his question lingered. A stark counterpoint to her earlier resolve. Would she dare to confront these fears, even if it meant exposing her vulnerability? As the weight of his doubts settled unsteadily on her shoulders, Sarah felt the tipping point, the undeniable challenge looming before her. Something shifted inside her. She understood the choice that lay just beyond this moment. Would she build on the potential for failure as a bridge to resilience, or risk denial in the face of possibility? With conviction swelling anew, Sarah prepared for the most significant response yet, to reveal the power of determination forged in the fires of uncertainty. But as she opened her mouth, a thought abruptly darted through her mind. Had she truly considered the implications of embracing vulnerability so openly on this stage? The question hung, a mirror reflecting back her deeper fears. Would they view it as an extraordinary leap of faith, or a blatant display of weakness? With her heart racing, Sarah recognized the urgency to find the balance between vulnerability and strength. Looking around the room, she saw the panel members awaiting her response, and a surge of determination overcame her reservations. She steeled her voice and spoke. Failure strikes, we will learn. Embracing that possibility is not about accepting defeat. It's about creating resilience. Every setback is an opportunity to grow, and true leadership is demonstrated in how we respond to adversity. A flicker of surprise crossed some faces, a glimmer of understanding that she was as committed to her own evolution as she was to the farmer's fight. This was no longer just about presenting a proposal, it was about living the principles she was advocating. With renewed clarity, she continued, if our efforts face challenges, we'll reverse engineer our approach, recalibrating based on feedback and the realities unfolding in the field. We must create cycles of improvement that allow both our objectives and the farmer's needs to flourish. The air in the room shifted, her words stirring a sense of possibility. Here was a new layer of connection, a mutual journey as partners navigating uncharted territory together. Yet, even as hope bloomed, Sarah felt uncertainty lurking just beneath the surface. Would the panel truly embrace her vision? Would they lend their voices and resources to a cause far removed from their traditional bottom line? One board member, the younger woman, seemed particularly engaged. So, are you proposing ongoing collaboration rather than a one-time deal? You believe in maintaining an open dialogue moving forward? Yes, she affirmed, sensing the vital connection forming. Collaboration isn't just a strategy. It's essential. I want us to form a coalition, one that includes farmers, economists, and community voices. We need to redefine how we measure success, combining profit with purpose. It's time to assess our impact on the community and the land alongside our finances. A nod of approval rippled through a few members, an inkling of recognition, a cautious acceptance of her bold ideas. Feeling momentum rise, Sarah launched into her closing statements. At the core of this proposal lies a commitment to justice, sustainability, and resilience. We have the power to reshape not only agricultural policies but also each farmer's future. Let this initiative reflect our shared responsibility to elevate lives and redefine success. When farmers thrive, we all thrive. Let's pave the way for change together. As she finished, she could see the panel members absorbing her words. Was this the tipping point? Would they push for comprehensive reform, or would they retreat to their norms? She had laid her heart bare, entwined her own aspirations with their decisions, and a profound silence engulfed the room as they considered her call to action. Finally, the bearded gentleman leaned forward. You've presented a compelling case, one not just laced with ambition but with authenticity. While this conversation carries risks, The potential outcome offers a meaningful legacy. At that moment, Sarah realized she hadn't just impacted the panel. She had transformed herself into an advocate who wielded both knowledge and heart. She had conquered the latent fears that clung to her aspirations, allowing her authentic voice to guide the conversation. As the meeting concluded, Sarah stepped out into the crisp air, heart racing, mind racing, a well of emotion surging within her. Feedback from the panel remained mixed, yet she could sense the tides had changed trajectory. They didn't reject her ideas outright. They were engaging, questioning her proposed paths, and that in itself was a victory. Harnessing this sense of self-acceptance, she smiled. The weight of expectation that had previously crushed her spirit now felt lighter, transforming into solid confidence. She had proven she could navigate uncharted waters, balancing the intellect honed through her education with the heartfelt connection cultivated alongside David and the farmers. Later that evening, as she sat on the porch with David watching the sun set over the fields, she breathed in the fresh scent of earth and growth. In that moment, she felt her transformation solidifying. She was no longer just Sarah, the academic chasing accolades. She had become Sarah, the advocate actively shaping her future and the futures of those around her. "I want to build something lasting," she confided to David. "A network that elevates voices, learning from our experiences." His acceptance echoed in the warm glow of the twilight. Together they began to sketch out plans for community meetings, an action plan for engaging local leaders, and ways to help their fellow farmers find strength in unity. As the stars emerged above, twinkling with possibilities, Sarah knew she had achieved an evolution that was both profound and necessary. She was forging a path that intertwined her passions with purpose, demonstrating that true personal fulfillment comes when ambition aligns with authenticity. The journey was far from over, but she felt ready. She felt equipped. This was just the opening act of a much larger narrative, one poised to influence change, rewrite futures, and inspire hope. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show you understand the power of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share.